What's up, Arizona StuMo? Good to see you guys. Hey, welcome back to Late Night. Man, I love the Kiva room. Is this an amazing room? Can I hear it? Let's go, let's go. Where else do you get this, right? Not in your classes, this is amazing. I love being in this room. It's probably the best room to have late night in, man. We're close, we're tight, this is gonna be fun. But guys, tonight we're talking about the essentials. We're talking about the things that you need if you're gonna have a successful relationship with Jesus in college. We wanna make it simple, we wanna make it easy, we wanna make it something that you guys can take and run with right after this talk is over and bring your best to it. And so we're excited to kick off the new year with that. And tonight we're talking about something so important, probably the most important part of the essentials. And so we're excited for it. Have you guys ever missed the big picture in your life? If you're with me, raise your hand. Miss the big picture sometimes? Okay, yeah, some people, details, they don't miss anything. That's not me. I'm a generalist, so oftentimes I'm missing the big picture. You know, I'm always doing that. One example would be my facial hair. Okay, so about twice a year, I'm trying to grow out this beard. And so I wouldn't quite call it a beard, but what I would say is every year I'm hopeful that I finally hit puberty and I start actually growing real facial hair on my face. And so I do this about once or twice a year. And so last year when I was growing, I grew it out for the longest I'd ever grown it out. It was probably like a month and a half, 2 months. And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, man, I look good. Right? I'm looking in the mirror like, man, this thing's finally working. Like all the patchiness, it's kind of going away. I'm looking good. And so my wife and I, we actually went on this thing called a marriage retreat. And so we went to this bougie hotel in Scottsdale. It was awesome. And in this hotel, in the mirror, they have these lights, right, around the mirror. And so they're like these glamour lights. I've never seen lights like this before, but I remember going into the bathroom, like flipping on the light, being startled by like the brightness, and walking towards the mirror and going, oh no, is this what I look like? And once I was like, Rose, that's my wife's name. I was like, Rose, have you let me walk around like this for a month and a half? She's like, I tried to tell you. I missed the big picture. I didn't see it. If you're related to me at all, which my kids are, sometimes they miss the big picture. Here's a picture of me coaching flag football right there. That's our team. We're the Lions, and so if you want to come out for some great football, man, Saturdays, I'll get you guys the times. You can roll out. If you guys want to just like, you know, stiff arm a 6-year-old, you can do that as well. It's a lot of fun. Come out there. But my boy Conrad, I'm looking for him right there. I'm trying to see him. He's right there, number 35, right? Okay, so he's chilling right there. And the thing about Conrad, you can't really see his face. He's a hype man. And so he's all about people. He loves engaging people. But when he's playing flag football, he misses the big picture. And this guy, he gets out there, and I'm telling you, he brings the energy, he listens, he gets in position, he does whatever it takes to be a part of the team. But the one thing that he can't seem to do is pull a flag. He won't do it. In fact, someone will be running at him, like the running back will be coming straight at him. He's in a perfect position, and he'll just start hopping, cheering the guy on. He's like, let's go! Passes by, he misses the big picture. He's a great guy, but like his dad, he misses it. I remember a time in high school where I really missed the big picture. And so I lived in St. Louis. Any St. Louis people in here? There's always a couple. Let's go! Okay. Actually, I knew you were right there, but I should have put that together. So we got one. Brett, you know what I'm about to talk about. So St. Louis, it's very wooded, right? Okay, so there's trees, it's green, it's the opposite of Tucson, like super humid. And so where I live, there's tons of deer. And so deer everywhere. In fact, you know, in a lot of places when they do, if you're a hunter at all, you do any of that kind of stuff, they'll have this thing called open season. And it's where you can go out there, and it doesn't matter what time of day, anything, you can just go take a deer out. Well, in St. Louis, it's always open season because there's that many deer. And so if you drive around St. Louis, like deer are a huge nuisance. They're always something that you see on the side of the road, whatever. And so one night, it was a weekend, I think I was a junior in high school, I got invited to this party, and I was like, man, I'm not really sure if I want to go to this party, but I got a text from this girl, Anna, that I really liked. And so I was like, she's like, are you coming to the party? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I'm coming to the party. And so I get in my 2000 Honda Accord with pleather seats. That's how we rolled. And I start driving down the road in St. Louis. I'm on this road where you can go about 60 miles per hour. And I'm doing something that it was new at the time, texting and driving. Personally, I loved it, right? I loved it. You could get two things done at once. I didn't really realize what was at stake, but Anna's texting me. She's like, you coming? I'm like, yeah. And so we're texting on the way there. Well, she sends me a text. I'm going about 60 miles per hour on this road. And I look down, and I'm texting her back. It's T9 texting. I don't know if any of you guys have done that before, but you can do it without looking at your phone. Anyways, I'm looking at it. I look down. I hear this thud, boom, on the front of my car. And I look up. I'm like, wow, that was loud. But I don't see anything. And so I'm looking around. I hear this thud behind me. And so I do what any of you guys would do. I just kept driving to the party, right? Totally forgot about it, right? So I keep driving. I'm going down the road, and I get to the party. It's a great time. I find out I'm very much so in the friend zone with Anna, but it's okay. We drive back. We go to sleep. I wake up the next morning. I'm playing video games in my bedroom. My mom comes in the room, and she's horrified. She's like, Jake, what happened to your car? I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean what happened to my car? And she looks at me and she's like, Jake, something happened to your car. You need to tell me what happened to your car right now. I'm like, Mom, you're getting a little pushy. I'm like, nothing happened to my car. She's like, okay, well, you're coming outside with me right now, and we're going to look at your car, and we're going to see what happened to your car together. So we walk out there, and I walk out the front door, and I am shocked. It's basically a Bambi murder scene, right? There's body parts on my hood. There's blood. I mean, there's fur like all over my car. I'd hit a deer going 60 miles per hour, and I think it evaporated when I hit it. I didn't go back and look. Safe to say, I missed the big picture, right? Man, we can do that in life. If you're anything like me, it's so easy to miss the big picture. I mean, when we go throughout life, it feels like the smallest things can tip us off and ruin a week, a month, a year for us. And if we don't keep our eyes on the big picture, it can really mess us up. One area where we can miss the big picture in our life is our faith in college. And so I talk to so many students about their faith in college. We help students grow in their leadership and their faith, and so many of them are wanting to grow in their faith. And a lot of times when I'm talking to a student about growing in their faith, what I hear from them, it goes something like this. Man, I do want to grow in my faith, but that's something I'll get to later on in college. Or that's something I'll get to after college. But because, Jake, if I'm honest, growing in my faith, what it sounds like to me is just a big list of rules, a big list of no's. It sounds boring, sounds cheap, sounds like not a lot of fun. And I know it's important, so I'll get to it later. And I think if that's our mindset on faith, I think if that's what we think about our faith and what it is in college, we miss the big picture. You know, so often when I was thinking about growing in my faith in college, what came to my mind, especially early on in college, was this list of rules. And it basically went like this. Don't use bad language. Don't have fun. Don't have sex, don't smoke weed, don't gossip, don't drink, don't lie, don't party. If anything is even close to having fun, don't do that. That's what I thought about faith. And if you're like me, and if that's any part of what you think about reading the Bible or growing in your relationship with God, what you're tempted to do when you feel that way about those things is to go half in, or even to not go in at all. We're tempted to believe the truth or this lie about God if we believe those things, that God is actually a God of no. He's the God of no. And if we think that's true about God, we miss the big picture. Just like me in my Honda Accord, making that deer evaporate, man, we miss the big picture. Now, where do we go to figure out what God is really like? Like, if we're trying to grow in our faith, if we're trying to get the essentials and figure out, man, what's important in growing in our faith and why we should read the Bible and things like that, where do we start? Well, I think the place that we have to start, if we're going to get a right mindset on this, if we're going to take off in our faith, so we have to start at the very beginning. And so some of you guys grew up in church. Some of you guys, this is a very new concept for you, growing in your faith or religion or anything like that. But if you're new to the Christian faith, this is what we believe. We believe that the earth started. God created the earth, and God put two people on the earth, Adam and Eve. And so what it looks like in the Bible is that God puts Adam and Eve in this place called the garden. And if you're familiar with this story at all, there's one big rule that God gives Adam and Eve. And this is the rule that tends to mess people up when they're reading the Bible. And what is that rule? It's the rule of this. God puts Adam and Eve in the garden, and then he tells them, hey, don't eat the fruit. You may have heard the term forbidden fruit, things like that. And when we look at that, we're like, okay, God puts Adam and Eve in a garden. It's this beautiful place, and he tells them, don't eat the fruit. I remember reading that early on, thinking to myself, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem like something that God would do. I don't really understand why God would do something like that. And this is what we're tempted to think about God interacting with Adam at that time. Basically, you can imagine, like, if we're thinking this, that God takes Adam around the garden, and it's just sad, right? It's a sad garden. It's not like a cool garden. It's like there's dead trees, some shrubs over there, and nothing's really appealing. But then there's this one beautiful tree in the middle of the garden. And Adam looks at that tree, and he's like, I want that. And God looks at him and says, no, you can't have that. That's what we're tempted to think. But as I learn more about the Bible, as I learn more about God, this is what I actually think that story was like. This is what I actually think it turned out to be. Man, God puts Adam and Eve in this garden, and it's a beautiful place. It's more beautiful than anything you could possibly imagine. And in this garden, there's beautiful trees and like all kinds of fruit trees, right? And so Adam's being taken around the garden by God. God's like, hey, Adam, check out all these awesome things that I made. Hey, see this? This is an apple. Man, it's amazing. Check one out. It's incredible. Oh, you like lemons? Man, check this out. Best lemon you're ever going to have right here. And he walks around the garden with Adam, showing him how awesome the garden is. And he's like, hey, man, you can have this. You can have this. Hey, avoid that one. But this, and this. It's all yours. You can have it. Changes the picture, doesn't it? I have some famous relatives. Semi-famous, no one like super famous, but there's this one guy, he's my wife's cousin, his name's Travis Borson, and so he won a reality TV competition. This is probably like 20 years ago. It's like America's Best Dog. And so I don't know if this TV show's on anymore or anything like that. All I know is he won this competition. He won like $100,000, right, in this competition, pretty solid. And so what they did was they took Travis, and they said, hey man, you're a sharp guy, you're social, we want to build some shows around you, and we want to start these animal shows and build them around you. So they started all these new shows. Well, one of the shows that they start, it's this show called Extreme Pet Makeover. It's definitely not on TV anymore. They did a pilot season. They were like, I don't know about that one. But they had it on TV. You can look it up on YouTube. But basically, Travis would go into these homes with these pet owners, and his job was to turn a pet from this over there, okay, that dog, this is really from the show, to this guy, right? And so he would take these huge pets, like pets that are like 3 to 10 times the average size of a pet. And he would take them from that to that. Some of you guys might have pets like that, right? Like, I don't know. So it's just, you know, they built the whole show like around suspense, and like it's supposed to be like this thing that really grabs you, and there's all this like this product placement stuff. Like he was trying to sell people these things called Fit Barks, which were like you put them on your dog and it like tracked their fitness and stuff. It didn't really take off. You could probably find one on eBay. I don't know. But the crux of the show is like they would get these huge pets, right? And like I'm talking massive, and it's totally not politically correct, but they would attach this pet to a harness, and then they would put it on a crane, and this crane would weigh the pet. So it was like this big tense moment. He would get down there and he'd go, all right, let's do the crane, and he would just start cranking the crane. Like slowly the dog's being lifted up. It has no idea what's going on, just looking around like, help me. And you know, it'd be like, your pet's huge, basically, like every single time. You didn't have to put him on the crane. But what blows my mind, every time I watch the show, which I'll be honest, I watched one episode. Every time I watch the show, that one time, he went into the pet owner and he's like, hey, just getting some background information on the pet owner. He's like, hey, how'd your dog get like this? And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you know, he's a little overweight. how do you get like this? And the pet owner would look at him and they're like, I don't know. I have no idea how my pet is 10 times the size of the average dog. It's funny, right? It's like, because we know how the pet got that way, right? The owners give the pets whatever they want, right? It's like they want a snack, full bowl dog food. Want another snack, full bowl dog food. They give it whatever they want to make their pets happy at all costs. They think they're giving their pets happiness, but in reality, at the end of the day, they're killing them, right? Their pet can't walk down the street. It's not good for them. The dog might be happy, but it's not thriving. Oh. Stick with me. Hey, here's the deal. The thing to take away from this is, man, God is a God of yes. He's not a God of no. But just like in the garden with Adam and Eve, sometimes he'll say no to a couple certain things to protect us for the things he said yes to. The things that give you life. The things that bring you joy and purpose. He'll say no to a couple things, man, to help you thrive. He's a God of yes. And the point is, God is the God of abundance. He's the God of abundance. And if we're going to understand that God is not a God of no, we've got to get that fact through our mind, myself included. So some of you guys know the Bible. You've been studying it for a while, and you're like, man, you're telling me God's not a God of rules and all these different things. But you're like, Jake, I got a list of rules for you that you need to help me with. It's called the 10 Commandments, okay? What do we do with those? Seems like a list of rules. Well, that's true. There's a list of rules in the Bible. It's commandments. It's called the 10 Commandments. And so if you're like me, early on, what I thought is like, okay, Moses helps the Israelites get out of Egypt, and then God gives them these 2 stone tablets, and it's these rules. It's like, man, why did God have to burden these people with rules? Are they useless? Are they fluff? Are they just something we don't need? And so we could be tempted to think that about God. I actually did some research. I was looking up what are the most useless laws out there, like actual laws in the world. And so these are, they're probably not the most useless, but these are some ones that I came across. And so track with me on these, 6 of them. First one, it is illegal to die in London's House of Parliament. Don't even think about it, right? Can't do that one. This one's interesting. Women must obtain written permission from their husbands to wear false teeth in Vermont. If we're at that point in our relationship, it's a little tough. Number 3, putting salt on a railroad track may be punishable by death in Alabama. Like, how did they get there? Like, what's the story behind that one? Like, what happened? This one's close to home, okay? Donkeys cannot sleep in bathtubs in Arizona. So, I know. I see you guys looking around. I know. Okay, this one actually made me angry, okay? This is messed up, and it doesn't make any sense. Number 5 says donut holes may not be sold in Nebraska. One of the reasons you'll never go to Nebraska, right? We weren't thinking about it in the first place, but now definitely not. Last one. It is illegal to sleep on top of a refrigerator outdoors in Pennsylvania. Okay? That one's tough. Figure out how to do that. Not that flexible. Okay, we can all agree, hearing those commands, that those laws, right, they're useless, right? They don't help, especially the Nebraska one, that's really messed up. They're not useful. They're fluff. They don't matter. And when we look at the 10 Commandments or God's laws in the Bible, we can be tempted to think, man, that's the same thing. It's just fluff. They had to fill these pages with something. So why not put a couple more commands and laws in there? What we don't know about the 10 Commandments, though, oftentimes, this is what it says right before Moses received the 10 Commandments from God. It's really interesting. It says this, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Again, it totally changes the idea of God giving the Israelites these commands. It wasn't just fluff. These people had just come out of literal slavery, right? Where they were tortured, where they were treated terribly by the Egyptian people. And God takes them out of there. He brings them freedom, and he says, hey, here's some rules to keep you free. Here's some things to help you guys thrive. And he gives them the commands. When I first started coming out to Arizona, we started doing leadership training, which is something we really love doing in the fraternities here. That's the first thing we did. And we went up to this one fraternity house, which you guys would know. And we're doing leadership training. And man, I'm just meeting awesome guys. This is the first time I came out here. I'm meeting with this pledge class. I'm going, man, we've got to be at the University of Arizona with StuMo. This is like 7 years ago. And so I'm meeting with the guys in the pledge class. And there's one guy in the pledge class that guys like more than anyone else, hands down. It's this guy named Matt. Okay, Matt is a great guy. You sit down with him, he's charismatic. Man, he's a good-looking guy. He's sharp, he's smart. He's got everything you could want. But as I started to get to know Matt more and more, what I started to realize was Matt wasn't free in his life. In fact, he was a slave to something in his life that was controlling everything he did, and it was pleasing the people around him. Matt spent his entire life trying to please everyone around him. He wasn't free. Everything he did was trying to please someone else. It's exactly the framework that he would go through when he decided to do something. Matt was known for jumping off a roof, right? Breaking bones in his body just to please his friends, right? One day, Matt took his dad's Mercedes, whatever, $200,000 car for a joyride with some of his friends just to show him how fast it would go. Woke up with a smashed Mercedes with the fire hydrant shooting through the moonroof just to please some friends. As I started to get to know Matt more and more, I was like, man, you're not free. Dude, you don't know what it means to be free. The thing about God's rules and why we should be invested in that essential in our life is because God's rules are meant to free us, right? They're meant to help us live the lives we were totally intended to live. Because God is not a God of no. He's the God of freedom. That's what he's about. So those are important things to me, but I think there's one more point that really stuck home with me as I was trying to learn about my faith my freshman year in college. And so, again, I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in a suburb of a suburb. And in high school, my friends and I, we decided we were going to go to college and we were going to pursue the things that everyone was pursuing. We were going to pursue money, we were going to pursue girls, we were going to pursue influence, relationships, power, all those different things that people were wanting in college. And so I got to college, and as I started going through my freshman year, here's the crazy thing, is I got all of those things. I remember going into my second semester of my freshman year and thinking, I have everything I came here for. I have relationships, I have amazing opportunities, I'm in a great house, great fraternity. I know tons of people. I'm getting everything I want. Yet there was part of me deep down that even though I was getting everything I wanted, I felt like I had nothing at all. Maybe you felt like that before. And I remember when one of the guys in my fraternity, a sophomore guy who had rushed as a sophomore, took me aside, he took me to Starbucks, and he knew that I knew something about the Christian faith, and he asked me if I'd ever read the Bible before, and I said, man, I here and there, but I don't really know much about it. I remember him sharing a verse with me in the Bible that day, and this is what it said. And this is Jesus talking to his followers. It said this, Luke 9:23, then he said to them all, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. I remember reading that verse and going, man, that's intense. I don't know, like, are you asking me if I want to do that? Like, I remember looking at him and being like, man, I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound like fun. And he's like, yeah, man, I want to ask you if you want to give your life to a bigger purpose. And I remember him pursuing me and seeing his life, and I remember saying no to him that day, being like, man, I don't know if I want to live that life. But as I started to see his life, and I started to compare it against mine, as he was trying to follow Jesus, as he was reading his Bible, applying it to his life, man, learning what God had to say to him, I started to realize, man, he had purpose. And not the kind of purpose that when you're 40 or 50 years old, you're asking yourself, man, is this it? Like when you get to the top of the pyramid, like all of you guys are going to do, right? When you have tons of success, you're super sharp, But one day you get to the top and you go, man, is this it? That's not the kind of purpose I'm talking about. I'm talking about the purpose that you guys were made for. That's what God is offering through his word, through the Bible. Real purpose. Not just a purpose, but the purpose that you were handcrafted for. The one that you were made for. The one that you lie awake at night thinking, what is it? It's there. And you can have it. Because God is not a God of no. He's a God of purpose. And he wants every single one of you guys to have a deep, meaningful purpose in your life. If I was going to sum all these things up into one phrase, it would just be this. God is not a God of no. He's the God of yes. That's what he's about. And so there's one final thing that we have to understand if we're going to really get this. And there's a verse in the Bible that's really interesting, and this is what it says. It's Romans 14:23. It says, everything that does not come from faith is sin. And so oftentimes when people think about the Bible or college or like trying to pursue that in faith, one word that comes to your mind oftentimes for people is sin. And they're like, well, sin is the fun things, right? And like, I mean, that's true about sin. Like, if you're not having fun when you're sinning, you're doing it wrong. Like, you hear that said a lot, but people misunderstand this word sin, and they think it's like God's lining up and he has this huge list of rules. He's like, if you break these, you're in sin, and that's what it is to be a Christian. You don't sin. Well, if I asked you guys, if for the next 24 hours, can you not sin, and I'm going to give you $1 billion, would you do it? Well, this is what I would do. So track with me for a second. Like, if someone came to me with that competition and they were like, Jake, go for it, man, 24 hours. I'm like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sit in this chair. I'm going to find, okay, well, first off, I need to find like an abandoned warehouse somewhere, right? Okay, so Tucson, not hard, right? We can find those. We'll make sure it's clear. And you go in the abandoned warehouse. We're going to set a chair in there. We're going to take a roll of duct tape, first arm, roll of duct tape, second arm, leg, get my mouth for sure, because I'll say something dumb. I'm Italian and Irish, which is a tough combination, right? I say dumb things all the time. Might as well cover my eyes, too, because, no good. And you sat me there for 24 hours, and I'm strapped to that chair, and you come to me at the end of that 24 hours, or let's pretend God's coming to me at the end of that 24 hours. He's like, Jake, have you sinned? And I would say, God, I hadn't sinned. I've been sitting here in this abandoned warehouse for 24 hours, haven't sinned once. And he would look at me, and he would go, Jake, you failed. Why would he say that? Because sin's not just avoiding bad things in your life. Sin is first and foremost the absence of good things in our life. And what that means for us is that the Christian life is not meant to be us playing defense, trying to avoid the bad things in life to be a good Christian person. No, the Christian life is about pursuing good. It's about going after the adventure of impacting people and leaving their lives better off than when you found them, about living an adventure, doing good, scheming for good with those around you to impact the people around you in amazing ways. Sin is not avoiding bad things. It's the absence of good in our lives. And when we avoid that good, man, we're not pleasing to God. Mark Batterson, he's a pastor in Washington, D.C., he says this. He says, if you're bored, one thing is for sure. You're not following in the footsteps of Christ. It's an amazing quote. Man, if you're trying to follow Jesus, if you're trying to be a Christian and you are bored, man, you're not following in the footsteps of Jesus. Let's be schemers for good. The main point I would leave you guys with tonight is this. Christianity is not about avoiding bad. It's about living for good. It's about impacting the people around you. And so when you're tempted to think those thoughts about reading God's word, you run across one of his commands, and it's like, let's just take a couple for examples. Like, man, be careful about your speech. You could say, oh man, that's That's a rule to be careful about my speech. But don't look at it that way. Look at it in the way that says, I'm going to live to encourage. I'm going to live to build other people up. You know, if you're stuck on, commands about like substances or things like that God has things that might help you thrive in your life, don't get caught up on that. Man, think to yourself, man, I'm going to live for good. Man, I'm going to live in a way that allows me to have maximum impact on the people around me, no matter what the cost, right? I'll do whatever it takes. Man, the guidelines God gives us, they're so important, but they're not the whole picture. Christianity is not about avoiding bad. It's about living for good. God is the God of yes. Imagine what it would look like if we in this room, myself included, we stopped avoiding God because we were afraid he'd say no to us. And imagine again with me, what would happen in your life if you started living as if God was truly the God of yes? It'd be an amazing life.